We've derived the demand for goods today, and it was downward sloping when the real interest rate's on the vertical axis. And now we can ask what would cause this demand curve to shift. Well, there are three things that can cause it, because remember that what we have is demand, total demand, consists of demand by consumers, demand by firms, and the government. So of course, a change in any one of these three can generate a shift in the demand for goods. So let's first suppose that government spending goes up and nothing else changes. So this is already a weird exercise because we're not allowing this higher government spending to get financed. So we're not changing taxes right now. So remember, it's a strange experiment. Okay, so this is going to increase the demand for goods at any given interest rate. And this curve, the consumption plus investment plus government spending curve, is going to shift up. And that's what we see here. So G2 is larger than G1. And it's the higher G that causes this curve to shift up. So we move from an equilibrium at point A, where income level Y1 generates demand YD1, and to a point B, where income level Y2 generates demand YD2. So if we go into the market for goods today, we have the real interest rate up here, we have output down there, and what we just showed was that when G goes up, government spending goes up, the demand for goods at any given real interest rate is higher. So this is an example of something that would generate a shift in this demand curve. More generally, though, output demand is going to shift out to the right if the present value of taxes decreases, because that raises wealth and therefore consumer demand at any given real interest rate. It's going to shift to the right if future income rises, because this also raises wealth and therefore increases demand today at any given real interest rate. It'll rise if future factor productivity rises, because productivity in the future, higher productivity in the future, will increase the demand by firms today for investment goods, because they want to have more capital online in the future when that capital is going to be more productive. And it can shift to the right also if the current capital stock were to fall. If there were a natural disaster that eliminated a big chunk of the capital stock, then that would raise the marginal product of future capital and therefore investment demand for any given real interest rate. We now have the complete model. We've put together the building blocks that will allow us to address a wide range of economic issues. So the competitive equilibrium gets summarized by the two figures that we'll turn to in a second. These two markets determine the equilibrium today, and that includes the real wage, the level of employment, the real interest rate, and the level of output, or GDP. So here's the labor market. We've got the wage on the vertical axis and employment on the horizontal axis. This determines equilibrium wage and the equilibrium level of employment. And then in the goods market, we have an upward sloping supply of goods when the real interest rate is on the vertical axis, and a downward sloping demand. And this determines the equilibrium real interest rate and the equilibrium level of output. So now we can ask a bunch of different questions. How does a temporary increase in government purchases affect the macroeconomy? What are the macroeconomic impacts of a decrease in the current capital stock due to, say, a natural disaster or a war? How does a temporary increase in total factor productivity affect the economy? And does this help us to understand business cycles? How does the macroeconomy react to an expected increase in total factor productivity? How does increased uncertainty in credit markets affect macroeconomic activity? But wait, there's more. We can extend this basic model using a lot of the methods that we've already looked at to address an even larger set of questions.